This is the 8th video from It Can Happen Here, a non-profit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting the personal freedoms guaranteed to Americans by the Bill of Rights. In these videos, we are exploring the claims that Donald Trump, the Republican presidential candidate in 2024, wants to be a fascist dictator. In earlier videos, we have discussed what fascism really means and what the projected Trump dictatorship would probably mean for First Amendment freedoms of speech, religion, and assembly, Second Amendment rights to gun ownership, Fourth Amendment protections from unreasonable search, seizure of assets and arrest, and Fifth Amendment's protections from self-incrimination, double jeopardy, uncompensated seizure of property, and other unfair treatment by the government. We now turn to the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, which is focused on fair treatment of persons accused of crimes. It guarantees criminal defendants a speedy and public trial, an impartial jury, the assistance of an attorney, information concerning the crime charged, the right to confront the police or others making the accusations, and to compel other witnesses to testify. Criminal court proceedings that do not include these fundamental protections are often referred to as Star Chamber trials, after the Star Chamber courts secretly convened in 17th and 18th century England to punish enemies of the king. Franz Kafka's 1925 novel, The Trial, is a nightmarish portrayal of a 20th century Star Chamber where the hapless accused is arrested and compelled to testify before shadowy prosecutors and judges without ever knowing the accusations, his accusers, or the law he allegedly violated. The framers of the Bill of Rights believed that the Sixth Amendment rights needed to be constitutionally guaranteed for several reasons. In many cases, British criminal law had developed in illogical, unfair, or inconsistent ways. For example, in England, criminal defendants charged with a felony were generally denied the right to a defense attorney, but were granted an attorney if the charge was only a misdemeanor. Also, the 13 colonies had each developed their own court systems that, while originally based on English courts, ended up different, including on the right to an attorney. The Sixth Amendment was an attempt to establish some bedrock rules that would apply to every criminal proceeding in the new country. By establishing it in the Constitution, the framers meant to disallow special secret and unfair courts like the English Star Chamber courts. Unfortunately, constitutional enshrinement did not stop 20th century fascist dictators from creating their own versions of the Star Chamber for their political opponents. In 1927, Mussolini created a special tribunal in fascist Italy for that purpose, without changing the constitutional rules for non-political criminal defendants. In 1934, Hitler followed suit by creating a new people's court outside of the German constitution, with jurisdiction over political offenses like black market activity, work slowdowns, defeatism, and of course perceived disloyalty to Nazi Germany. Donald Trump has a history of threatening his political opponents with criminal prosecution. In the 2016 presidential election, Trump repeatedly called for the imprisonment of his Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton, despite her never being charged with a crime, openly relishing the chance at his rallies to lock her up. In 2023, however, the tables were turned, and Trump himself was accused of a number of crimes. He was indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for inciting the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, and for refusing to turn over classified documents, and by the states of New York and Georgia for creating fraudulent business records and attempted election fraud, respectively. In June of 2024, after he was convicted on the New York charges, he threatened to use the federal justice system to prosecute President Joe Biden and his family. More recently, Trump said that, if he is elected president in 2024, lawyers, political operatives, donors, voters, and election officials who were involved in unscrupulous behavior in connection with his loss in the 2020 presidential elections will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels, unfortunately, never seen before in our country. Trump's words strongly suggest that, if he did become an American fascist dictator, he would prosecute his political enemies. In those prosecutions, he might try to evade the Sixth Amendment, either by negating the Sixth Amendment generally or, more likely, by establishing a new separate court for prosecuting political offenses, as did Mussolini and Hitler. His public threats against political donors and voters frighteningly suggest that his definition of prosecutable political offenses would be quite broad. Please join us next time when we discuss the effect a fascist dictatorship could have on the remaining provisions of the Bill of Rights. After that, as promised, we will begin an in-depth discussion of the likelihood that Donald Trump wants to be a fascist dictator, as some, including President Joe Biden, have claimed. We will also discuss whether he could ever accomplish that goal and what, if anything, we should do about it. Once more, before signing off, we will remind you. As unthinkable as it seems, fascism could actually happen in the United States. But fascism can only happen here if we fail to stop it.